I work for a main dealer franchise, and tonight my employer has unconscionably verbally told me that I will be subject to disciplinary action. This was because I hung up the phone on a customer who had lost her temper and become argumentative with me. Now, there is no policy or procedure in place that has been explained, set out, and had adequate training given regarding the handling of customer complaints. Now, does my employer have the right to bring on disciplinary proceedings against a policy that doesn't exist, and how much notice do they have to give prior to a hearing?
Daniel, are you working on a Saturday evening?
Well, till 6 o'clock tonight.
Okay. I don't know why I said it with a surprise. I'm working on a Saturday evening, as is everyone helping me out with the show in the production gallery tonight. So just tell me a little bit more about this customer. Don't swear, please, because you're on live radio. Daniel, can you hold your phone still? It sounds like you're moving around or rubbing the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm outside at the minute.
All right, Daniel, I'll tell you what. We're going to come back to you. We will come back to you.
No. I've just jumped into my car.
Okay. So without using any inappropriate language, can you give me a little bit more about what the client was saying to you?
Yeah, not at all. I'm not angry at all. So I was dealing with her elderly parents, who I cared a lot for and did everything I could to help them. Unfortunately, something went wrong at handover where they misunderstood. I was asking them to set up their own insurance. They couldn't collect the car because they're too elderly to get insurance at the time. So I sent them away. I phoned their daughter out of courtesy, and she just got really upset. She completely blames me. I bit back slightly, but obviously there's no expletives, nothing like that. I was upset, but I said, look, I'm going to end the call now, and that was it.
Well, that doesn't sound like a disciplinary issue.
This is what I was thinking. Yeah.
Does the dealership record calls?
Yes.
How does your employer know that this happened? Did she phone in to complain?
So I walked into my boss and said, look, I think a complaint's going to come through in a second. And lo and behold, the phone started ringing. Well,
hang on then. If you thought a complaint was going to come in, surely you thought there was a risk you might have behaved inappropriately.
Well, that's a good point, actually. I think the customer was upset and I knew that there was going to be a recourse. So I didn't think that she was just going to leave it there after I ended the call.
Was the customer upset about the fact that you'd hung up, or was the customer upset about the fact that you'd potentially been guilty of a miscommunication and not warned them about the insurance problem?
Probably both, actually.
Yeah, Daniel, this is what it's really about, isn't it? It's about not making elderly customers aware they have to get insurance. This is what the problem is. It's not about you hanging up on someone.
Do you know what? I hadn't actually looked at it that way.
What do you think now that I've stated the bleeding obvious?
Fair enough. I had asked the daughter, so I'd invited them specifically before they collected the car, and I'd spoken to the daughter who's visited every time. I said, please, can you set up their own insurance? Now, there was a misunderstanding there. They thought I'd said that I was going to help them set up their insurance. I thought I told them that they were going to set up their own insurance. So, of course, there was the upset.
Okay, so let's circle back to the question that you asked, because I went off down a little bit of a tangent. But sometimes that's helpful because it does show that there might be two ways of looking at this issue and what the problem is. Your employer can discipline you for anything. Your employer can take you down a disciplinary if they reasonably believe that you've either acted in a way that's below acceptable performance standards or acted in a way that's in breach of acceptable conduct standards. And it doesn't have to be written down in a policy to be improper. Let's take a very silly example, Daniel. If you're talking to a potential customer and you pick your nose and flick it at them, that's not going to be written down. There's no pick your nose and flick it policy. But do you think your employer would be entitled to take a dim view of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So from that, would you accept that it doesn't need to be written down in a policy to be potential misconduct?
No, that's true. Yeah.
And I think that's the answer to your question, Daniel. If you fluffed up on the insurance issue, or if your employer reasonably thinks you fluffed up, they're entitled to give you a written warning or potentially something worse, although I doubt it would be worse. How long have you worked, incidentally, Daniel, for this dealership?
I've been there for 2 years.
Okay, so as long as you've worked for 2 years, you've got protection against unfair dismissal. I think they're unlikely to dismiss you for this. The other question you asked me is how much notice do they have to give me of a disciplinary hearing? Do you want to know what the legal answer to that is?
I should think nothing.
It's a reasonable amount of notice, but 2 days will be plenty.
2 days, the ACAS Code of Conduct says 5 days. Now, I know that's a guide, but isn't that minimal standard?
ACAS talks about, the ACAS Code says should, not must. And they use those words carefully. Should means this is best practice in an ideal world. Must means it's a legal minimum. There is no legal minimum. It's just a reasonable period. And I've never known an employer, I've been doing employment tribunals for a quarter of a century, I've never known an employer in this sort of situation have a legal problem if they've given 2 clear days' notice of the allegations and given the supporting evidence. Now, if you say you need extra time to consider it, and they unreasonably refuse, you might have an argument there. But if you're happy with 2 days, there's nothing wrong with it.
Okay.
All right.
No, thank you very much, Daniel.